Okay, welcome everyone to today's Google Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangout. My name is John Mueller. I am a Webmaster Trends Analyst at Google in Switzerland. And part of my role is to talk with webmasters like you guys and to make sure that we answer your questions and that we take your feedback on board when we work on our products, when we work on our search algorithms. So looks like there are lots of you here already, even though it's almost a holiday, I guess. The office here is pretty empty. So if one of you wants to go ahead and start with a question, feel free to go ahead.
Hey, John, real quick on a Webmaster Tools question. Notice something on the sitemaps where sometimes where it says like how many are indexed out of how many are in the sitemap, that will seem to fluctuate even though nothing has changed as far as the URLs that are actually in the sitemap. So I guess a two-part question. One, would you have any idea what causes that phenomenon? And two, might there be any plans in the future to actually indicate what items from the sitemap are and are not indexed?
It's hard to say what could be causing that. My guess is that we're just kind of dropping and repicking up URLs. I could see that happening, for example, if you have a fairly large site, and sometimes we can pick up a little bit more of that, sometimes we can't pick up all of that. So those kind of fluctuations are kind of normal as we kind of crawl and index a site. With regards to getting information about the URLs that aren't indexed, I can see that making sense for a smaller site, but for any larger site, there are going to be lots and lots of URLs that aren't indexed, and having those individual URLs isn't really going to help you that much. So what I do there instead is split your sitemap file up into logical segments and just figure out which parts of your sitemap file are getting more indexed or which parts aren't getting as indexed, and kind of on an aggregate level look at it on your site and say, okay, all the category pages are getting indexed, and that's essentially the most important page for my website, so that's fine. If not all of the blog posts are getting indexed, then that's something you can live with. If the important pages aren't getting indexed, then that's something you might want to think about what you could change in your site structure in general to kind of make it easier for us to recognize that those pages are really important.
Okay, thanks.
John, since nobody's around, could you share with us what fun stuff is coming out in the search queries report, the Webmaster Tools?
Not really. I don't really have any details I can share there at the moment. And this is the kind of thing where we're working on something that's will probably be interesting and fun to use, but at the same time, we're still in early stages, so we can't really give you too much information on what we're doing there. So we're trying to kind of bring together like all the information that we have from the search query point of view there, and make it a little bit easier for you to pick up the parts that are more relevant to your site. I see some wishes already being posted in the chat. Yeah.
I know we're too late for Christmas, but you know.
Yeah. Usually we try not to launch new stuff during this holiday time because it ends up being fairly hard to maintain if anything goes wrong. So that's why we try not to push anything new out just before Christmas or just around Christmas, New Year, that time of year. So I don't think you'll see anything happening there before next week, and even then it's still at a fairly early stage where we're trying to figure out which direction we need to pull this, what we need to improve in the UI. So it's not at the stage where I'd say you're going to see something crazy happening next week.
Did you happen to get my email? I did have one feature request that I thought would be interesting. I thought, why not use Gmail data for extra data space to save our legacy Webmaster Tools search query data? Or what if we could give you FTP information and we'll gladly store it on our sites? If you need space, we have space, if that's the issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. I don't think that would work from a technical point of view because this storage has to be quick enough to kind of be queryable directly. So I don't think that would make sense directly, but I did pass that on, and I think that kind of encourages the team to also see what we can do to bring more data there. So I don't know how easily that will be possible because there are lots of sites out there. But yeah.
Cool. I did have one quick question. So I guess we're obliged to ask about Penguin, and if you have any new information about that, and if you don't, that's no problem. We can just quickly move on.
I don't really have anything new to share there. No, sorry.
Okay.
This is also, I guess, one of the areas where the engineers are trying to take a break and see how things go at the moment. So no big changes happening there.
Sweet. Then I had one quick question. Do you know, does Penguin crawl sites? I know Panda will do a site crawl sometimes, but I was wondering if Penguin was doing a site crawl, because I've been seeing really weird fluctuations in various websites' crawl rates.
That would probably be completely separate from like an algorithm like Penguin or Panda. That's something where usually there are technical signals that we pick up when we kind of like recrawl a site in a big way, and those are the kind of things where we kind of look at what we've seen from the recent crawls and kind of recognize that something significant has changed, and then we'll say, oh, well, maybe we should check the rest of the site as well. So it's not so much that a quality or a web spam algorithm would say we should recrawl this website, but it's more like we see significant changes on this website, so we say, okay, well, let's take a look at what else changed.
Cool.
All right, here we have a question about HTTPS. I checked a few websites that made this change, and I didn't see a boost in their SEO performance or traffic, so why should we move our website to HTTPS if it's not going to help? So I think first off, it's important to keep in mind that this is a fairly small change at the moment. So it's not something where you would see a jump from number 10 to number 1 immediately. And on the other hand, this is also something where I think the long-term trend is just going to be towards HTTPS. So in the long run, it's not going to be something where users will go to a website and say, well, if only this website were available in an unencrypted, insecure way, then I'd love to visit it more often, because there's really no downside to implementing HTTPS once you have that set up. It's something that helps your users, that helps you, because you know the content that you put online is the content that the users see. So it's something where I think that the general move is just going to happen more and more in that direction. I imagine over time you'll see that this factor is something that we can improve on, and where we can say, well, it really makes sense to kind of push this a little bit more so that we can perhaps count it a little bit higher in the rankings. So it's something where I imagine over the long run you'll see a bigger change than you would see immediately at the moment.
John, can I ask about my own site?
Sure.
So I assume you've seen some comments I've made or some people made on the downtrend in traffic on the search engine roundtable. And then somebody's like, what are you doing? What am I doing to improve things on the site to increase the traffic? And I kind of made like a joke that I'm trying to figure out how to become an authority in SEO. I'm trying to write content that people want to hear and people haven't heard other places. And I'm trying to make sure that people enjoy reading the site. So as you know, I'm pretty sure you know, I mean, it looks like I was hit by Panda. I mean, I don't know if you can confirm that or not.
I haven't actually looked at your site recently, so I don't really know which part of the trend you're looking at.
Okay.
I
mean, I figure it's like New Year's Eve, so I figure nobody's really watching anyway if you want to take a look. But I mean, I don't know what to do. Honestly, I don't care about the little technical issues. Do you have old content? Of course I have old content that's dated. It's a news site that's 11, 12 years old. So I'm sure some of the stories I have from 11 years ago about PageRank updates or monthly Google crawls and stuff like that. That's outdated, but yet it's relevant back then. I'm not going to go ahead and delete historical content because it's dated. It's dated. It has a date on there. It said this is the date. So at the same time, people socially share my stories all the time. I think people think I'm an authority. I do have a Wikipedia page, which gives me some type of notable credit. So I'm pretty confident I was hit by Panda, the last big Panda refresh that was supposed to help smaller websites. That's my own thing, as well as other people think I was hit by Panda. And I'm not going to go ahead and say, oh, I have to remove this piece of content because it's no longer relevant. I mean, it has a date on it for that reason. People have to be able to read dates on stories from 10 years ago and say, all right, this is dated from 10 years ago. It might not apply. I don't think the New York Times has to do that. I don't think any site has to do that. So,
hey, Barry.
So I guess in general, I wouldn't worry too much about the dated content and say this is like, I don't know, Google made this change 5 years ago, and it's made 17 changes in that part of the algorithm since then, so it's no longer relevant. I wouldn't worry about it from that point of view. In general, I also wouldn't look at it as too much of a technical issue if you're looking at Panda issues. But instead, I'd look at, I guess, the website overall, the web pages overall. That includes things like the design, where I think your website is actually pretty good compared to a lot of other sites. So from that point of view, I see less of a problem. But it also includes things like the comments. It includes things like the unique and original content that you're putting out on your site that is being added through user-generated content, all of that as well. So while I don't really know exactly what our algorithms are looking at specifically with regards to your website, it's something where sometimes you'll go through the articles and you'll say, well, there's some useful information in this article that you're sharing here, but there's just a lot of other stuff happening on the bottom of these blog posts, where when our algorithms look at these pages in an aggregated way across the whole page, then that's something where they might say, well, this is a lot of content that's unique to this page, but it's not really high-quality content that we'd want to kind of promote in a very visible way. So that's something where I could imagine maybe there's something you could do. Otherwise, it's really tricky, I guess, to look at specific changes that you could do when it comes to things like our quality algorithms.
So you're telling me to look at the comments?
Well, I think you have to look at the pages in an overall way. You shouldn't look at the pages and say, I mean, we see this a lot in the forums. For example, people will say, well, my text is unique. You know, you can copy and paste it, and it's unique to my website, but that doesn't make this website, this page, a high-quality page. So things like the overall design, how it comes across, how it looks as an authority, kind of this information that's in general to a web page, to a website, that's something that all comes together, but also things like comments, where a webmaster might say, well, this is user-generated content. I'm not responsible for what people are posting on my site. When we look at a page overall, or when a user looks at a page, they see these comments as a part of the content as well. So it's something that kind of combines all together to generate something that users see, something that our algorithms see overall as part of the content that you're publishing.
Okay.
Hey, John, what about the ads? Sometimes I notice there's ads on Barry's site that seem to me to be a little off topic.
I haven't noticed that. So at least speaking for myself personally, it's not something that I noticed. And if these ads are on these pages and they're essentially not in the way, they don't kind of break the user experience of these pages, and I see no real problem with that. It would be a little bit more tricky if these were, for example, adult content ads, where our adult content algorithms would look at this page and say, well, the primary topic isn't adult-oriented, but there are a lot of adult content ads on here. Therefore, we don't really know how to kind of fit this into our safe search filter and say, is this adult content or not? I haven't seen anything like that on Barry's site, so at least from my point of view, that's not something I'd worry about there.
Hey, John, just jumping in a coffee shop right now, so I apologize for any background noise. I will mute myself as soon as I'm done. Barry's site is, it's one of those trusted sites among SEO communities. I mean, it's just right up there. And how could something that big be suppressed? And to me, I'm obviously a non-Googler. It doesn't look like Panda based on the content he has and the social, all the community he's built around it. Is there anything you can give to Barry that could possibly point him in the right direction of recovering whatever that drop actually was?
I have to take a look at the details of what specifically is happening there. So it's not that I have anything magical where I can just like pop a URL in and say, oh, well, this line of HTML needs to be changed, and then everything will be back to normal. To some extent, things always change on the web, so you'll always see some fluctuations. I imagine that kind of plays into this as well. But I guess looking at the site overall, I do see that it's a great website. It brings across a lot of really timely and important information. So it's not something where I would say offhand this is something that we would see as low-quality content. But sometimes there are elements that are kind of a part of that overall image that also play a role, where we'd see like the primary content is really high quality. Maybe there's another part of the page that isn't that high quality, and that kind of makes it hard for our algorithms to find the right balance and say, okay, overall this page is 70% okay, 60% okay, 90% okay, this kind of stuff. So that's something where it's really hard to find the right balance there, and something where I wouldn't want to say without analyzing it in detail, this is good or this is bad or this is a specific type of thing you need to change there.
Well, I'm just curious for really any website, not just Barry's, I mean, all of us, I believe, except for you, John, are non-Google employees. What access do you and your team have back there to be able to really assess what's going on with the site, good and bad?
We have a lot of things. I mean, we have to, on the one hand, we have to be able to kind of diagnose the search results and see what's happening there. That's something where we have to figure out which teams we have to contact internally to kind of find out more about this, to escalate problems that we see. So we do have quite a big insight into like what's happening in search, and we try to kind of refine the information that we have into something that the webmaster can use, something that we can say publicly. So it's also, I guess, important from our point of view that we don't tell you something to focus on that's very specific to a problem that you're looking at now, but rather something where we can say, well, this is the general direction you should be focusing on, and if you focus on this general direction, then that's something that will remain relevant regardless of any algorithmic changes that we make in the meantime. Because if we said, okay, this line of HTML is being picked up by the Panda algorithm as being problematic today, then next week it might be a different line of HTML that the algorithm is focusing on. Whereas if we kind of guided you into the general direction where we say, okay, well, you should be looking at this in general, then that will remain relevant regardless of any algorithmic changes that we make.
Hi, John.
Previously, you mentioned in regards to comments that if a article was a considerably long original article and then there was relatively few comments, then they may have little to no bearing on the ranking, whereas a short article, however good the article may be, that has a great deal of comments may have to be a lot more concerned about that. So that's something about some of Barry Site's articles that are, they're original and knowledgeable content, but they may be like news flashes about a specific topic, so they're short and then have a lot of comments. So do you think that's kind of a potential area that you are previously referred to?
I think that's something you could look at if you wanted to look at it in kind of a specific way like that. But in general, I just see comments as something that's a part of the pages that you're publishing. So if you look at the page overall and you see, well, this is the part that I wrote, this is the part that other people contributed, then of course, if depending on the size of your page in general, that's something where a large part of the content that you're publishing is either contributed by other people or written by yourself. So it kind of automatically falls into that area that you talked about, where if you have a short article with a lot of comments, of course those comments are going to be a larger part of your page. So that's something we'll pick up as well. So it's not something where I'd say you have to watch out more for your comments if you have short content, but just generally keep in mind that what you're publishing is the whole page. It's not just that specific article that you have on top, but actually the whole page that you're providing to search engines.
You're not saying that Google doesn't understand the difference between the primary content versus the comments on the content. The algorithm does understand the difference, correct?
We do try to figure that out. And for some sites it's easier, for some sites it's not that easy, but still it's something that is a part of the content of the page. So it's not that we would say, well, these are comments, therefore we're going to completely ignore them, or these are comments and therefore we're going to kind of 90% ignore them. They're essentially a part of the page that you're publishing for.
Okay, and going back to the comments themselves, so at least in my case, I watch the comments. I have Discuss. It does a lot of the filtering of the pure spam stuff. It lets some things through. I have 3 different queues on how I actually monitor and block spam. I'm pretty good at it. So spam is clearly something that's not there. Maybe there's some that creeps through. There's obviously a lot of people who comment on my site that are impacted by certain algorithms, and either they're upset by it or they're not, whatever. They write it fast, just like I write my stories fast, and sometimes the grammar and the English and stuff like that doesn't really come out that well. I'm not going to go ahead and rewrite their comments. Do you think maybe I should? Should I rewrite people's comments to make it spell better or just sound better? And a lot of these things is like, it's a lot of people helping each other in the comments like you would in a discussion forum. I could easily quickly block all the comments, which I don't want to do because it's really part of the whole purpose behind the site. But again, what would you recommend in that case?
It's hard to say. So I kind of have to look at your site in general to kind of figure out what I'd recommend there. I think definitely monitoring the comments for spam is something that should definitely be done. It sounds like you kind of have that covered. How you handle like lower quality comments, I guess it's tricky sometimes, and it's something where I don't have any like default answer where I'd say you should do this or you should do that. I think rewriting other people's comments probably doesn't make that much sense, but maybe there are ways that you can kind of bubble up the higher quality comments and kind of not put the lower quality comments in front and center. I realize that's sometimes really tricky, especially when you're looking at something where people are obviously very emotional about specific changes, for example. That could mean that there's some, let's say, ranty comments out there that are really popular by the people, but actually that don't bring a lot of value to the article itself. So finding a balance between bringing them front and center and making sure that the actual high-quality content is front and center from your pages is something where you kind of have to find that balance yourself. And I don't know what possibilities you'd even have with a system like Disqus or with any of the other commenting systems that are kind of out there.
John? Okay, I'm just trying to go by the rule that I tell people is forget about SEO per se. Obviously, do everything technically right according to the technical requirements and stuff like that. But really, when you build your website, make sure it's something that people want to read, and make sure that it's something that Google would be embarrassed not to rank well in the search results. And then Google will have to take a look at it and say, what are our algorithms doing maybe wrong or not as well as they should be? And maybe Google's algorithms will adjust for it. So that's what I'm trying to go by. I don't think, at least in my sense, that the design could be updated. It's not bad. It's probably 1,000 times better than most websites out there. And there is a design update coming in 2015, but I don't think that's an issue. I do think that I let a lot more comments go through than maybe I would at Search Engine Land, but again, it's more about the community versus just readers. So I'm trying to bring more of a community aspect. I won't let pure spam through. I won't let pure hateful comments go through, and I'm sure you see a lot of that come through early, and I delete a lot of that stuff later. So I guess, I don't know. I'm going to just keep with it and see what happens with the Panda algorithm going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely pass that on to the team to kind of have them take a look at it as well. But like another thing that I've seen some sites do is bring like only a part of their comments to the main page and move like the bulk of their comments out to a separate URL, for example. I don't know how much of that would be possible. I don't know how problematic those comments are in general over time. Maybe this is just something that we see when we look at these articles when they're fairly fresh. But I'm happy to kind of take that on to the team as well, to let them take a look as well.
You know how it is. With software, I could have one of my engineers or coders build an algorithm that says pluses on comments, minuses on comments. The ones that have the highest pluses stay on the page, and the ones that have the lowest go off the page. The question is, should I do that? And if you want to let me know, let me know. If not, I'll just leave it as is, because I really do think the ones that are plussed higher are the ones that are probably more ranty. So it might not work out that well in terms of the algorithm itself.
Yeah.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Talking about quality and high-quality content, we in the e-commerce space, we are building a car rental comparison engine, and we work in a very competitive field. So I wanted to know how much weight has the content of your pages, the high-quality content of your pages, and the high quality of your search engine or booking engine, in order if it's different than the others, or bring more qualified results for our visitors. I'd like to know if it has some weight each one, or it's only about quality content.
It kind of comes together. So if the system behind your website doesn't work that well, then essentially it kind of generates low-quality content. So that's something.
I was talking about the results for the people. If we bring different results than the other booking engines, and they are with more information or more quality information for the user, not inside our machine. It's only talking for the users.
Well, that's essentially content.
Okay.
Whether it comes from your database and your algorithms that you use to compile that information, or if that's a page that was manually written, that's essentially content that you're providing on those pages.
Oh, that's right. And I'd like to know if we are doing a lot of more quality content in overall all our website, and I'd like to know if we started today publishing it, how much time I need to wait to have improved our rankings. We work in Spain, much or less.
Yeah, there is actually no fixed time for something like that. So we we would probably recrawl it fairly quickly. If you submit it in a sitemap or with a feed, we would probably show it up in our index within a couple of days, depending on how much content, what kind of site it is. So we would know about it fairly quickly, and from that point of view, we would be able to show it in the search results then. So I would guess within a couple of days you would see that we would show that in search, but it's hard to say when that content would have an effect overall on your website's ranking, because that's something that just takes a lot of more time to kind of aggregate that information and to kind of turn that into a general positive signal for your website, where we'd say, well, overall this website has gone from having very little high-quality content to a lot of high-quality content, and that's something where I would imagine you'd be looking at more of a time frame, like maybe a half a year, something like that.
Okay, thank you. And a little more question. I have a website, it's only one-page website, and I'd like to merge with other websites in order to keep the backlinks and the content. How could do this? If I want to merge this one site with one page to the other website, but in a page it already exists. I don't know if I explained my issue.
So you're combining two websites?
Yeah, but no creating a new web page, but merging it with an existing web page, if it's possible.
Sure. I mean, one thing you can do is redirect one of the URLs to the other one, and that helps us to combine the signals that we have for those pages, and then we can recrawl and reindex that new page that you have based on whatever is there. So redirecting pages and combining them like that is something that I think is a normal part of the web. It's something that always happens, where you refine your content and you say, well, I had 5 pages and I combine them into 3, or I combine them into 1 page and I make that page much better than those 5 individual pages, and that's the normal part of the web. So I wouldn't worry about doing that kind of maintenance. I think that's completely fine.
Thank you very much, John.
All right, here we have a question. Does natural links from domains like directories with additional values, like a blog forum on the same domain, or other websites with many unnatural outbound links can be bad for my rankings? Google flag bad link, bad pages, or bad domains? So I think this question is, can like bad links from bad websites have a negative effect on my website? And in general, that's something where I'd say no, that doesn't have a bad effect on your website. If we know that a website, for example, is selling links, then that's something where we can say, well, we're just going to disregard all of the links from this website. So that's something where, in general, that's not going to cause any problems. On the other hand, if the majority of your links are from sites that we would classify as being problematic, then that can look a bit fishy to our algorithms, where it looks like, well, all of your links are just from directories and none of your users are recommending your website, then maybe there's something problematic. Maybe there's something that you need to look at there. So in general, I'd say no, having individual links from sites like that is not a problem. If you see that all of your links are like that, and especially if you have kind of done this yourself, if you've hired an SEO to kind of create those links, then that's something that you might want to clean up as well. So that's something where cleaning it up with the disavow tool can help. So you could try that as well.
Quick question, John.
Sure.
Let's take a hypothetical situation where a webmaster doesn't know about the Webmaster Tools, the disavow tool, and has the majority of his links are these type of directories or websites selling links, and is obviously affected by the Penguin penalty. Meanwhile, he goes ahead and gets some good quality links, and the percentage of low quality links changes gets smaller. But he doesn't, again, he doesn't use a disavow file or anything else. Would this help him? So if the majority of the links become the quality links, would this help him remove, or would the Google bot remove the Penguin penalty? Would they reconsider?
That would definitely help, yeah. So, I mean, we look at it on an aggregated level across everything that we have from your website, and if we see that things are picking up and things are going in the right direction, then that's something our algorithms will be able to take into account. So in the hypothetical situation of someone who doesn't know about any of this, and they realize they did something wrong in the past, and they're working to kind of improve that in the future, then that's something that our algorithms will pick up on and will be able to use as well. Still, if you're in that situation, it wouldn't be that I'd say you should ignore the disavow tool and just focus on kind of moving forward in a good way, but instead really trying to clean up those old issues as well. And it's not something where we'd say that using the disavow tool is a sign that you're a knowledgeable SEO and that you should know better about these links. It's essentially a technical thing on our side where we don't take those links into account anymore. It doesn't count negatively for your website if you use a disavow tool. It's not something you should be ashamed of using. If you know about this tool, if you know about problematic links to your site, then I just recommend cleaning that up.
Okay, I'm not really in that situation. Again, it was just hypothetical. I was mainly curious from a technical point of view. I mean, would the penalty actually get removed if the majority, if the percentage of low-quality links diminishes? The actual Penguin penalty, would it be removed?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that our algorithms would take into account, where if they look at the site overall and they see that this is essentially improving, if it looks like things are headed in the right way and the important links are really good links that are recommendations by other people, then they'll be able to take that into account and modify whatever adjustment there was made with that change there on that website. So that's something they would take that into account. I wouldn't say that you have to have more than 50% and then the algorithm will disappear for your website. It's very, let's say, there are lots of shades of gray involved there where the algorithm could say, well, this has looked really bad in the beginning. They worked a lot to kind of improve things overall. Things were improving significantly across the web with lots of good recommendations for this site. So it's kind of headed in the right direction. So it wouldn't be that it disappears completely, but maybe it'll kind of like step-by-step improve.
Thank you.
John, if I can jump in just to follow up on his last question.
Sure.
Regarding the disavow, I've posted in a bunch of, probably Barry's site as well. People know me as the guy that disavows twice a day. I've been having to. I do it in the morning and at night because we're still undergoing a negative SEO attack. I should say negative link spam attack on the site. How will we ever know if the disavow tool is actually working? I only ask that because a month after the attack started, our rankings, our trajectory was going, see if I can do this prospectively right, straight up, and we are literally just down 1 month after, and I was disavowing twice a day since day one. We have probably 1,700 domains disavowed. We only have like 800 and some actual domains to our site, legitimate linking domains. Basically, what should we do? Keep disavowing and hope it's going to work?
You sent me the note on Google Plus yesterday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I looked at your site briefly, and there was really nothing from those problematic links causing any problems. So that's something where if you're seeing negative changes, then they wouldn't be resulting from those kind of bad links that you're seeing there. So either you're handling the disavow properly, or we've been able to kind of ignore those links anyway. So from that point of view, I think you're probably doing the right thing by cleaning up these kind of issues as you see them pop up, but I wouldn't assume that all of the changes you're seeing in search are based on on those links. So things like looking at your site overall to see what you can improve in general, that's something I'd still keep in mind, and that's something I'd still focus on as well.
We have disabled comments from day one, so I'm not going to get involved in the comment discussion. Thank you, Doug.
Man. Yeah, sorry. I'm never going to hear the end of this one, I guess. All right. Yeah, but I think just focusing on the links would be wrong, but really making sure that the rest of your site is really as good as it possibly can be, that's something I'd still recommend doing there. But obviously, if you're seeing bad links, putting them in the disavow file is fine.
Thanks.
All right. From where does the knowledge graph take its data? Google's not showing the knowledge graph of my website. What can I do in order to appear with a knowledge graph? We use, for the knowledge graph, I think we use a variety of public data that's available. And that's something that we show algorithmically. It's not something that we show for every website, for every query. So just because that information is available doesn't mean that we'd always show it for your website as well. So with that in mind, what I'd recommend doing is just primarily focusing on your website and making sure that people are seeing it as something important, that they're writing about it, that they're talking about your website, that we do have kind of this additional information to back up that it would make sense to actually show a knowledge graph entry for that website. How do you explain the extremely small changes in search results in the last 3 weeks? I don't really know what specifically you're kind of pointing at there, but fluctuations are essentially normal, and these are things that always happen with our algorithms, even if there's nobody manually flipping switches at the moment. So these are the kind of fluctuations that always can happen, my guess. I don't really know what specifically you're pointing at. Maybe there's also technical issues that are sometimes involved on these websites.
Hey, John, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So you said a couple times in the past that in terms of the quality algorithms, the traffic we should be looking at in terms of their satisfaction should be mostly keyword traffic. And you've also said to me before that organic traffic is most important to look at in terms of how satisfied they are. Is that still the case? Should we still be focusing mostly on the keyword-based traffic?
I'm not really sure what you're referring to there.
Really, not in terms of, I know you guys don't use the analytics bounce rate or anything in the analytics package, but in terms of our seeing it from our perspective, what traffic do you think we should focus on there to make sure that they're satisfied? Because you used to say keyword traffic or organic-based traffic. I was just wondering if we should extend that to all traffic now, or...
I don't know what I could best recommend there. So my suggestion would be to really take into account anything that you have available to kind of understand how happy users are with your website. So that's something where you can take into account whatever metrics you have available on your site, which could be based on analytics, it could be based on social mentions, it could be things like +1s or thumbs up, thumbs down, those kind of things on a site. I wouldn't focus on any specific metric from that point of view. So anything that you can do to figure out which parts of your site are really well received by your users, where they think this is great content, and which parts of your site are not so well received by your users, that's the kind of thing where I would focus on. That's the kind of thing where our algorithms should be able to pick that up on as well. So instead of focusing on specific metrics and saying, only people coming through with keyword traffic from organic search results are the ones that we need to make happy, I'd really think about what you can do overall on your website to find the parts of your site that work really well, improve the parts that don't work so well, and make sure that everyone who kind of comes to your site, leaves, is a happy user, and is willing to kind of recommend your site to other people as well.
So it makes more sense to take a broader approach and look at everyone and make sure everyone is satisfied with the content. For example, I recently had a client, we did a TV spot, and we had a landing page for the TV spot, and we didn't robot it out or anything, maybe we should have, but so we had thousands of people coming to this one landing page, and then they bounced right away, and some went to the site, some didn't. Let's just say it was really low quality traffic in the sense that they were very uninterested, but we did get thousands of people through. So that wasn't organic traffic, but we don't know what Google's tracking there to measure satisfaction, and we're not sure if we should be worried about that, should we?
I wouldn't worry about that from an SEO point of view. That's something, I think it helps a lot to understand your users and kind of which parts of your site work well and which parts don't. And indirectly, that's something that we would be able to, or we would try to pick up on as well. But it's not that we primarily look at the users coming to your website and say, oh, these all typed the URL that was in a TV spot, and therefore they're not as relevant or they're really relevant. It's something where I think internally you get a lot of information out of that, and indirectly that can lead to kind of us recognizing which parts are relevant on your website, but that's not something where we'd see a direct relationship between the traffic that you drive to your website through a TV spot and how we would be able to rank that or that site in general, or maybe a related site to that. So a lot of times people have a different domain for like a TV campaign because they want something short and memorable that has a specific landing page, and that's not something we'd be able to take into account from search anyway. So if these are things that are outside of search, then that's not something where I'd say there's a primary direct effect available for us to even look at there. But it does always give you more information about how people are looking at your site and maybe how other people are looking at your site and which parts you could improve on, which would then be something that we'd be able to kind of look into.
That actually kind of goes back, dare I say, to the comments question, because because there's a quality of traffic, right? There's very interested traffic that's going to love your site or have a better percentage chance of loving your site. And then there's traffic which is, at best cruel, at best uninterested and at worst cruel. And so who do we have to cater to? I mean, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it doesn't make any sense to try and cater to that second group because they're just a bunch of curmudgeon-y people anyway.
Good question. Yeah, I don't really have a direct answer for that one. Yeah. So I think this is something where it's always a balance between like which people we send to your site through search and how you respond to that. And sometimes you might say, well, Google is sending me people who I don't really want on my site because they're all idiots or because they actually don't like what I'm publishing, and I prefer to have people who kind of like what I'm publishing. And that's something where, at least at the moment, there's no direct feedback loop where you could say, hey, Google, stop sending me these types of people and send me more of these types of people. So it's kind of a tricky situation there. But I don't really have any, let's say, direct answer for that.
That's cool.
Is that not a content issue? That if you tailor the content around the type of visitors, you can never stop everyone, but
yeah,
it's surely a targeted content issue rather than a Google doesn't choose people.
Yeah, I mean, if you can kind of target your content and make it easier for Google, for instance, to recognize that this is the type of content and this matches what these type of people are searching or the type of queries these people are doing, then that's something that obviously helps us there. If it's very generic content where you don't really know exactly who's going to that page, and obviously you'll have a mix of people going to that page. But the better your content matches what you want people to search for or how you want to be found, the more likely we'll be able to show it in the right time. So from that point of view, that's definitely the case.
John, if I can jump in with one final question, I promise. It's really more about a term that we can use in the Webmaster community for a site that is trying feverishly hard on all aspects of breaking into competitive search, undergoing a disavow, a link attack that we're disavowing, but we've still not been able to cross that invisible magical threshold to break into competitive search. What would you call a site like that? Suppressed, not sandbox, I guess, but is there any term you could use?
I'd have to make something randomly up. I don't have anything offhand where I'd say,
please do.
Internally, we would call a site like this, I don't know, like some random word, but I don't have any term that we would use for something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Hi, John. I have a question about page layout.
Okay.
I'd like to know, I've seen some content organized with tabs, with CSS, in order to hide some tabs, and showing only one of the, like the tabs you are seeing. Is it's a good solution or a bad solution in order to show a lot of content without making a truly big web page? What do you think about?
There are kind of pros and cons there. On the one hand, if the user is searching for something that's in one of the tabs, then they'll be kind of confused if they land on this page. And they'll say, well, I searched for this, but this page is showing me something about something slightly different. So that's something that our algorithms do try to take into account, where they say, well, this is the visible content, and this is additional content on the page that's not immediately visible. So we'll be able to say, well, maybe this content isn't that relevant for this specific page because it's not really visible by default. So for content that's really critical for a page, where you would say users are searching for this and they want to find this, I'd recommend using separate URLs for those specific tabs. If this is just additional content that you're providing on those URLs, which just provides a little bit more context, which maybe gives the user a chance to submit a form or something like that, then that's something that I think is perfectly fine to be used in tabs. So kind of think about, does it make sense to put this on a separate URL, or is this something that I think users might want to open if they want to kind of get that information, but they're not primarily looking for that information? So kind of make a decision based on that.
Thank you. And I have another one. And now it's very, very typical having big headers with big images, like that you can see in Medium websites. And most of the content is below default, or mostly below default. What do you think about that? Because pretty nice design, but I don't know what Google thinks about that.
That's usually fine. That's not something where I'd say you have to worry about that. I'd only worry about something like that if the images are really unrelated to the primary content. So if the image is an ad, for example, if it's something from another website, if it's something pointing to other articles on this website, then the user will land on that and they'll be kind of lost. But if the image is a part of the primary content, where you say going to this page and kind of having this nice header image on top, encourages the user to kind of read the rest of the page, and it all matches the kind of the same general topic, the same kind of the primary content, then that's something that is perfectly fine. That's not something I discourage.
Okay, thank you very much, John.
All right, can you tell us more about what's happening in Webmaster Tools next year? We try not to pre-announce too many things, so I don't really have that much more to kind of let you know about that there. I think you'll see more and more happening with mobile. That's something that I believe is a really important topic. That's something that I think a lot of websites still aren't getting completely right. So that's obviously one area that you'll see more happening there. We also talked about the search query report, I believe, in one of the last Hangouts, where we're working on some changes there. So I'd imagine in the course of the year you'd see some changes there. But lots of things can still happen, and depending on the feedback that we get from you guys, obviously we can kind of tailor the future as well and say, well, this is a more important topic than other things, so we should focus more on that. But otherwise, I don't really have anything interesting that I could pre-announce for you guys. What I'll try to do where we can do that is to kind of provide beta versions for people if we have something that we'd like users to kind of try out before we make it into a final version. I don't know how easily we'll be able to do that with anything that's immediately coming up, but I think that's something that's always really useful for us. So we'll try to do that where we can.
John, at the 8-minute mark, Josh asked you about Googlebot being triggered to crawl more of a site based off of an algorithm. That's the case, that Googlebot can be triggered, say, crawl more based off of the Panda algorithm or based off the Penguin algorithm. That happens?
I don't think we do that. I don't think we do that based on those specific algorithms. Obviously, we have lots of algorithms, and some of these are algorithms specifically for crawling and indexing. So if we see, for instance, specific changes on a site, then we might start recrawling that. And that's obviously something where if you make bigger quality changes on your website, then we'll see that and say, well, lots of things have changed on this website. Maybe we should take a look at it a little bit better. So maybe there is some kind of correlation there that if you make specific changes on your website, then we'll start crawling more to kind of recognize those changes, but it wouldn't be specific to the quality algorithms where we'd say, well, your site has, I don't know, some Panda on it, therefore we'll crawl it more frequently, or we'll crawl it less frequently. It's usually more of a technical issue where we say, well, things have changed on this website, therefore we should be crawling it to make sure that we pick up those changes.
Thank you.
John, quick follow-up on that and on Panda in general. I was actually asking in the group chat as well, would Barry's issue be something like a penalty? So do you consider Panda actually a penalty? Is the problem, or do you see a problem with the website? Like the website has an issue, so we're going to demote it until the issue is resolved? Or something like the comments change how Google understands the content of the page and says, I don't know, this page isn't relevant for these keywords anymore. We think it's relevant for something else, so we're going to demote it because of that.
Yeah, so we don't see the Panda or the Penguin algorithms as penalties internally. We see these as essentially part of our search quality algorithms to kind of figure out which pages are relevant to specific queries. So that's not something where we'd say we're penalizing a site for being low quality, but rather our algorithms are looking at these pages and saying, well, overall, maybe we were ranking this site or these pages in a way that we shouldn't have in the past, and we're kind of adjusting that ranking. Or we're adjusting the ranking so that we can make sure that other pages that we think might be higher quality content are more visible in the search results. So it's not that we would see this as a penalty, but rather as something, just a part of our search algorithms that adjust the ranking based on the perceived relevance for these individual queries.
Okay, so basically most of relevance problem rather than the site is bad, there's something wrong with it problem.
Yeah.
Interesting, thanks.
Hey, John, for the last question of the year, for me at least, if somebody basically is competitive, highly ranking on competitive keywords, and getting good natural links along with the other people in the space, and then that site is suppressed by one of the quality algorithms for a year, year and a half, 2 years, at which point during that period of time they're not gaining those organic links because they're not able to be found. Once they're no longer suppressed and they're back kind of near the top, is it ever possible for that site to kind of catch up with the natural high quality links of the other sites that were never suppressed?
Sure. Yeah. I don't see a problem with that. So, I mean, things always change on the web. So if you're talking about a period of more than a year, then lots of things will have changed. Sites will have changed. The way these sites function sometimes changes. And if your site is the same as it was 5 years ago, in extreme case, then even if we kind of took out a manual action and made the site rank completely organically again, it wouldn't show up in the same place in the search results in the same way as it did 5 years ago. So over the course of 1 year, things changed quite a bit. Over the course of multiple years, they'll change quite a lot. So obviously, things will change during that time. But that doesn't mean that the site is kind of stuck and kind of lost forever. It can become just as relevant as all of the other sites out there. It's just a matter of making sure that it works well. It's something that users want to find. It's something that our algorithms think belongs in the search results, and we should show it more prominently.
Okay, thanks, and Happy New Year.
Thanks.
John, can I, since we've just finished on the sites that haven't ranked for 18 months to 2 years question, is there any chance you can give me an update on what's happening with ours?
I know some engineers are looking at it, so it's...
We saw a very slight increase in mid-December, but we're a gift company, so obviously even if we're suppressed, you'll still have a seasonality for normal customers, because normal customers know us and they will search for us, specifically our brand, and we've had, over the last 10 years, 100,000 customers, so there's going to be some just coming back anyway, no matter what Google does. But we did see a slight jump in the middle of December in terms of organic visitors, and there was a shift, but it's now going back to normal. So I don't know if, even if you can't tell me if it's something shifted, whether you could tell me whether that was seasonal and or if there was something you can see there as a change. And that's the site with the E rather than the X.
I'd have to take a look at the details there. So
I can wait.
Yeah, I don't have anything specific. I know the engineers said they would look into your specific case to see what was happening there, and last I heard they were kind of looking at that as something that we need to improve on our side as well. So from that point of view, I think it's on the right track, but I don't really have an update on how things will change there. So,
no, it's just, I mean, because we've now been 18 months into this without any change other than a downtrend, I didn't know even if they could give us a time scale, because then at least we can plan a business around it, rather than, because the business can survive at a certain level if we know that's what the level is going to be from here on in.
Yeah.
But running a business of 10 people, for example, when you know that it's only actually can support 3 or 4, you kind of need to know where to start budgeting for B rather than A.
I don't really have any update on that. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
But I can definitely pick up on it in the new year with the engineers again when they're back.
Okay. Well, we'll still be here.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
All right. Let's take a break here. I'll still be online for a few minutes afterwards if you guys want to chat. But otherwise, it's been great having you guys here in the Hangouts, and it's been an interesting year with lots of good questions over time, and I hope some of the information that we've provided here, that we've talked about, has been helpful for webmasters. So with that in mind, let's hope that next year takes up again and we do a bunch more of these Hangouts as well. So thank you all for joining, and hopefully we'll see each other again next year.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.